For as long as Lovewell Lake has existed, Memorial Day has been considered the start of the summer recreation season. School's out for the summer, the weather's warming, it's a day swimming pool's open for the season, and families like to go camping and skiing, many for the first time of that season. On Memorial Day, attendance at Lovewell State Park is often the biggest of the season. In 1971, Memorial Day was observed on May 30th. Most years, it was just a one-day holiday, but that year the calendar was such that many people had a three-day holiday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Problem was, the weather didn't cooperate. It was a cold, wet, miserable weekend. Memorial Day was the last day of the three-day weekend. It was just like the other two, cold and damp, with a stiff wind stirring up whitecaps on the lake. Not a good time to be wanting to do water skiing and other water sports. I was starting my second year as editor of the Superior Express, and I was short of copy. The previous year, the governor was in town to dedicate a memorial at the park, and there was a double fatality on one of the lake roads. It wasn't all good news, but I had plenty of news and pictures for the paper. That wasn't the case in 1971. I was short of news and pictures, and so that afternoon I went to Lovewell Lake, hoping I could find something for the paper. And I was in luck. Though it was cold and gloomy, I found a group of youngsters playing in the lake. I always prefer to take pictures of local people that will be known by our readers, but that year I was desperate enough to accept anyone. The group I found was from Lincoln, Nebraska, but I didn't care. I started shooting pictures. Visiting with their parents, I learned they'd been at the lake since Friday night. Each day they hoped the weather would be better, but it wasn't. And the kids had been shut in their small pickup campers for the duration. They had lots of energy to burn off. Before starting for home, their parents let them out to run around. The grass was still wet, and the mud holes were easy to find. The kids didn't care. They were getting to play outside. And their parents didn't care if they got wet and muddy. For an hour or two, they'd be breaking camp and heading home. After 3 days at the lake, their clothes would all need washing anyway. If they got to play a while, they'd be a lot calmer on the trip home. I didn't see the activity start, but I understood that one may have been pushed into the lake and soon all were in the lake. They weren't exactly wearing swimming attire, unless you count sweaters, sweatshirts, long pants, and the like as swimming attire. The state park was different than it is now. There were few trees, no rock along the shoreline. They started jumping, or perhaps they were pushed off the bank and slid down into the lake. They made a short mudslide and were sliding down that and landing in the water. Since they were wet and muddy, why not go a little further? Before their play ended, their parents had joined in the fun with the little ones. They were too young to play with the bigger youngsters. And while this slideshow ends there, the story doesn't end at that point. It was 15 or 20 years later, and I was again short of pictures for the paper, published there the first Thursday after Memorial Day, and I'd gone to the lake again in search of something to photograph. I was observing the swimming beach when I heard a 20-something guy say to the girl sitting beside him on the beach, "We've been here for 3 days and you haven't gotten in the water." That was understandable, for most of the time it had been cool and perhaps raining. And then he said, "If you're going to get wet this weekend, you better do it soon, because it's about time for us to go home." Without hesitation, she jumped up, ran straight for the lake, and dove in. I had my camera ready when she surfaced and started wading back to shore, minus the cap she'd been wearing. With water running off the sleeves of her sweater and a big smile on her face, I snapped a picture. She saw me and walked my way. I thought maybe I was in trouble. Maybe she didn't want her picture taken. I prepared myself for a tongue lashing that I thought was going to come for taking the picture. When she reached me, she asked, "Would you be the photographer that once took photos of a bunch of kids from Lincoln playing in the lake with all their clothes on?" I replied in the affirmative, and she said, "I was one of those kids." Hope you enjoy looking at the pictures and remembering what Lovewell Lake was like in 1971.